So Google recently made some changes to their API, and that means that some applications that have been used to back up Google Photos have stopped working. So I've been working on an Rclone container. Rclone can back up Google Photos. It can back up many other things as well. And getting an Rclone with a web GUI running wasn't so hard, but getting the Rclone container to authenticate using Google Authenticate was a bit harder. Actually, it took me a number of hours to figure out how to do this. It will create a link that you put in a browser to use Google Authenticate, but that link will start with the localhost IP address 127.0.0.1. And that means that it only works locally from the same local host as the Rclone server. So if I were to put it, say, in my computer's browser, my computer's browser is not the same device as it's running the Rclone server. It's certainly not localhost to the Rclone server, so the Google Authenticate IP address that Rclone was creating didn't work. So what I had to do is I made a Firefox container that's connected through YAML code to the Rclone container, and I'm running both in host mode. The advantage of running them both in host mode is they both share in this case, my QNAP NAS's network stack, so they can both show up as the same IP address as my NAS. Since they share the same network stack, this Firefox container will show up as localhost to the Rclone container. Then when my Rclone container creates a Google Authenticate link, I can put that into my Firefox container and use Google Authenticate. So let me show you how this can work. So first of all, Rclone Web GUI. This is currently working through my Tailscale IP address. I have a Tailscale VPN, and something that I think is actually pretty good for security is this is not currently working through my regular NAS IP address. So see port 5670. Let me just put that in with my regular normal NAS IP address. We say 5670, and that fails. But it works from my Tailscale IP address, so I have to VPN in, which I think is great for security. You can do things like you can go to your dashboard, explore, mounts, things like that. So from here, I can see my Google Photos. You see open. So these are the photos I've been backing up. Anyway, I don't have to go too much detail there. But let me show you how you can actually get this to work and set it up. So first of all, if you want to back up your Google Photos, I found when you create a new config, you have to call it Google Photos. Otherwise, it doesn't properly connect. Even if I authenticate, it doesn't properly back up the photos. So I at least found I had to name it this, but create a new config. I'm going to name it something else so you can see the process, and this won't actually back up any photos because I'll name it something different, like Google Photos. Next, next, and that would just let me know it created an authentication link. So let's go back here, go to my container, logs, make this bigger so I can see the authentication link. Here it goes. Please go to the following link and see it's a localhost IP address. So if you've ever seen a t-shirt that says there's no place like 127.0.0.1, it's a takeoff on Wizard of Oz. There's no place like home because localhost is kind of like home. So if I put this in my regular browser, it's not going to work. So that's going to fail, but I have my Firefox browser. So this is my Firefox container running on my NAS that is considered local host to the Rclone container. And now Google Authenticate works. So then I could go and add this. Now I'm not going to because first of all, it's the wrong name. I've already added what I want to add. I'm already backing up my photos, but that's basically how this works. You can load up your Rclone container through the port for the Rclone GUI. You can add a config. I'm just going to delete this now because this thing won't actually work. You have to call it Google Photos, or at least I have to call it Google Photos for it to work. And once you correctly authenticate, it starts backing up. Then you can go to Explorer and see your photos. And to go back to my YAML code, as you can see, I mounted my container folder and my Google Photos folder. So let's go to my Google Photo folder. As you can see, the photos are here. So I don't just have to access them from here. My container is mounted to a NAS folder, so I can access them directly from my NAS folder. Let me go through this YAML code real quick, kind of explain it a little bit. So give it a name, Rclone Web UI. Image, this basically goes to grab this image and install it. I give it a name, my container's name, network mode host. It has to be in host mode and the Firefox has to be in host mode. They have to both be in host mode for the Firefox to show up as local host to the Rclone. This is optional, but I chose, rather than just run as root PUID, I made a user that has less privileges. It has privileges to these folders on my NAS. It has to have privileges to these folders. It's not going to work, but otherwise has less privileges. Containers are already pretty isolated, but hypothetically, if container isolation were broken, not an easy thing to do, but hypothetically, if it were, it's nice to run it as a user that has limited privileges to the NAS. These are the volumes I mounted to my container. Now, these are the folder paths on my NAS, but on your NAS, the folder path could be different. And it's actually important you get this right. So you want to SSH into your NAS, find the real folder path to your share folders that you want to mount on the container. If you type in the wrong folder path, then this can get written on your system directory. And writing things on your system directory can slow down your NAS. And if you write too many things, your NAS can just stop working until tech support can go in and SSH in and delete those folders from your system directory, but that's just a pain you don't want to have to deal with. And this is kind of launch the web GUI, username and password. So our clone has a little web GUI, as you saw, it's right here. Username and password, which you can change that later. Restart unless stop. So if you restart your NAS, it's great if the container restarts. I want to point out that this also says restart unless stop, but now that I'm considering, if I were to do this again, I might not put that for the Firefox, because I think after I use Firefox to authenticate, I'm going to just shut it down. So here's the Firefox container, the image it grabs, the name, run in host mode, gave it a volume on my NAS, and I kind of think I probably didn't need this, and maybe I don't want this if I were to reconfigure my container. So that is the YAML code to make the Rclone container connected to the Firefox container, both in host mode, so that Firefox is localhost to Rclone, so that when I get this IP address to authenticate that needs localhost, it will work from my Firefox container and I can authenticate. So I'm really happy I got this working. I thought this was really cool, and maybe this will help some people out who want an app that can back up their Google Photos.